Let's go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Up for discussion today are the two issues for decision. Resolution 21-FY 2025 is seeking authorization to enter a sub-grant agreement with GWA for grant-funded water and wastewater infrastructure projects for Manilao and to support the new medical campus. As the board is aware, GPA executed or is in the process of executing a similar agreement for the power infrastructure required to support the Manilao and surrounding areas. This is a similar resolution seeking your approval for GWA to enter a similar sub-grant agreement to support the medical complex and the communities of Manilao and Barrigada with water and wastewater infrastructure improvements. We anticipate that there will be projected growth in Manilao because of the potential development here, and these projects would ensure reliable potable water and wastewater services to support that new public hospital, public health economy, and protect the environment, as well as provide infrastructure for the corridor between the surrounding areas and the new medical campus. With this authorization, we would be able to install infrastructure that it would be otherwise pretty challenging for us to put in without this development occurring. And so there would be a public benefit to this, not just in Manilao, because of the routing of the wastewater infrastructure. Improvements would also be required to certain portions of the utility infrastructure in the Route 10 corridor and associated side streets in Barrigada, as well as the Barrigada pump station. So the general locations of the development would be along Route 15. The preliminary work we have to do will determine whether we can route some of the infrastructure up to Lalo Barrigada through a easement to be acquired from the Navy, or if we would take it all the way to Route 15 and Route 10, and then provide infrastructure upgrades from Route 10 to Barrigada, as I mentioned, for the wastewater. It would also determine if there would be water infrastructure requirements in the form of new production sources on the potential hospital property and a new reservoir to support water service for the medical campus and in the Manilao area in general. The total cost is $62.9 million that has been set aside for water and wastewater infrastructure expenditures that need to be incurred to the funding availability date, which is December 31st, 2026. So that gives us our anticipated completion date. It's a very difficult timeline. We are not sure at this point whether we can get all of it done, but we intend to structure the design and construction packages such that we can get as much of it done as possible within that funding restriction deadline. And then if there are future funding requirements for any remaining work, that would be at the cost of the developer. The source of these funds is ARPA grants, specifically for infrastructure upgrades.
Colleagues, do you have any questions on this specific resolution?
Yeah.
Mr. Martinez.
On the wastewater on the Route 15. So when you start on that one, are you going to go into the side roads or from Route 15 to the traffic lights?
So there will be a need to install a pump station at the lowest part of the acquired property to service the campus and any gravity lines that are put in for future development, and we will have stub outs for that to accommodate future connections. On the discharge side of that pump station, we would take the force main up along Route 15 to a point that works for two things, and this is part of the preliminary engineering that has yet to be conducted. But we would either take it through a force main all the way to Lalo Barrigada and then feed by gravity from Lalo Barrigada all the way to the Barrigada pump station. If that is not feasible, then the alternative approach would be to take it to a point up to where the elevation allows us to discharge, and then install new gravity lines from that point all the way to Route 15, and then upgrade whatever gravity lines exist that need to be upgraded between Route 15 and the Manilao pump station, and then similarly from the Manilao pump station along Route 10 all the way to the Barragata pump station. So we'll look at all of that and see what's the most feasible option, but right now the lowest cost option appears to be moving through an easement, a Navy easement that takes it to the Lalo Barragata area, because it cuts out a large part of upgrades that would be required. If we did any work that we do in the corridor to install new gravity lines would include, we would try to include stub outs to the side streets, but not necessarily we have not estimated funding to go all the way and expand the network into the side streets, but the basic infrastructure would be there for future expansion. And there would be, in my assessment, a benefit to doing that in certain areas, because we have water wells in that area, and expanding the sewer collection system would serve in the future to protect those water wells.
Commissioner Chong.
Miguel, I'm not sure if you were on the last GWA, last regular section, the session, the CC brought up some concerns about how the resolution was written in regards to naming the medical campus in the resolution and in the resolve clause. Can you just take a look at that and kind of incorporate the same things we asked GPA to do?
You want to address that, or now, or do you want to just take another look at
I
it?
believe we referenced Manilao.
Yeah, we kind of geared away from specifically citing the medical campus, and if we could just incorporate that, because I'm sure Commissioner Sanchez is going to want to see that as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we can work on that and then send it back to us before the regular session on Tuesday. Okay. Miguel, I have a question on page, this is 29 of board books, and I'm looking at your wastewater cost estimate. What do you mean by 50% of potential cost share? It's broken out in...
I'm not sure that we put a percentage there.
There is.
It
It says 50% of potential cost share. I'm just...
Sorry, which page?
I have it on page 29 of board books. I don't know if you guys get that.
Yeah, so when we transmitted the original estimate,
Correct.
we indicated where there might be a potential cost share for any work that overlapped with work that we are required to do under the partial consent decree.
Okay.
So if there is an overlap and the timing matches the timing for our consent decree project, then we would have in our CIP funding available to do some of this work. So if there was a cost share opportunity, we listed it. Frankly, my recollection of the document that I transmitted, we put the potential for cost share, but we did not put a percentage. So if there is a percentage here in this document, this may have been put in by GITA or the governor's office. So we will vet this before.
Thank you.
But the full amount is funded?
My understanding is the full amount is funded,
Okay.
and then if there is a potential benefit to a cost sharing benefit that it could reduce these amounts. If, as I said, the work and the timing aligns with our plans for the partial consent decree.
So I'm going to follow up. Next question. The cost savings, if it's realized, goes to who? Us or
That has not been
discussed?
discussed, but our intention was, we know we need to do this anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I was reading this and I said, what's that?
I mean, if there was a cost sharing agreement and the hospital was not being built, we're getting the project done for 50% of what it would cost, right?
Okay.
So,
No, it's, yeah, okay. Colleagues, anything else?
Just so I understand that correctly, this is a project that you would have pursued regardless of the medical campus anyway?
yes, for example, the partial consent decree is very clear that we need to upgrade sewer pump stations.
Mm-hmm.
All of our sewer pump stations in the partial consent decree negotiations were organized into 4 tiers.
Mm-hmm.
Tier 1 and Tier 2 are priority projects. And so I believe that the two pump stations that are, existing pump stations that may be implicated in this, these upgrades are both within the tier 2 category. So if we were going to do this anyway, for tier 1 and tier 2, there's a specific set of deadlines in the partial consent decree on when we have to get it done.
Okay.
And Miguel, going back, right, we're routing the potential waste here all the way back down into Agana?
Yes, all of this flows to
That's
Agana.
why I see all the, Route 10, Route 8, Route 1, and then there's a section in just the Hagåtña main, and sewer pump station is gonna get some work done in the Hagåtña main. This is on page 22
Yeah.
of board books. But like I said, I've read this thing, I'm just,
Yes,
it's
that's
part
correct.
of, it's part of your,
So the existing infrastructure all flows down towards the
Agana.
Agana wastewater treatment plant.
okay. Colleagues, anything else on this resolution only?
Nothing from me.
Okay, okay, Miguel, next one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next resolution is 22 FY 2025, and this we put together as a complement to the work that would be required. So the difference between GWA's work and GPA's work on this is that they pretty much have documents prepared to go out for design build construction, and we do not at this point.
Okay.
So we're doing preliminary engineering work in order to figure out the routing, and once that is more well refined, then we will need to develop documents that can be used for a design build procurement. So Resolution 22 seeks approval for additional funding to existing IDIQ contracts we have for PM/CM services with engineering companies for island-wide sewer collection, transmission system repair, and rehabilitation. So what we would intend is for the purposes of getting those bridging documents, as we call them, done to facilitate a design build procurement, we would issue task orders, and we're estimating at this point 30% design would be necessary to provide a package that we could get competitive design builds for the completion of this infrastructure work. So we estimate, based on the total value of the sewer infrastructure and the total value of the water infrastructure required, a percentage of that total cost for the engineering work, and then 30% of that engineering fee estimate is the amounts. That's how we've determined the amounts here, and that comes up to about $790,000 for the water infrastructure and $1.1 million for the wastewater infrastructure. And we're seeking your authority to authorize additional funding in these amounts as a not-to-exceed amount for developing those bridging documents under existing IDIQ contracts, and we would use this grant funding to execute task orders to complete the bridging documents, and then move forward with a design build procurement for the construction of the infrastructure. So again, these are not to exceed amounts. We don't have a clear scope set up for this, but these estimates would be akin to our engineering, regular engineering estimates, and how we would seek funding authorization to execute task orders on any other engineering contract. So the methodology is sound. The estimates we think are sufficient for us to move forward, and because time is of the essence, we would like to use these existing IDIQ contracts, and we're just seeking this additional authorization to use the ARPA grant funding to issue task orders so that we can get this work done. Again, the same deadlines apply. We need to get these projects completed by December 31st, 2026, and we would use the provided ARPA grant funds in order to execute these task orders.
Okay. Questions, colleagues?
Miguel, so this particular resolution is related to the first one that we just presented.
Yes, it
Do
would.
we need to make this separate, or isn't it already part of that money grant that's going to come into this?
It's part of the same pot of funds.
Yeah.
The first resolution just involves authorizing us to enter into that agreement with GITA. This would be separate agreements under the sub-grant agreement. So we would still need separate funding authorization to execute these contracts.
Anything else, colleagues? Okay. All right, that's it on the resolutions, right?
That's it on the
GM
resolutions.
report?
We can move on to the management report, starting with our production. For the month of February, we had 97 wells active during the month of February, producing an average of 35.7 million gallons a day. Spring production was at 0.24 MGD. Ugam was at 1.6 MGD, and Tumon Maui was just a touch over 1 MGD, for a total of 38.6 average million gallons a day for the month of February. The following page just shows you the production at the Tumon Maui well, which has been fairly steady. We do have an issue at the Tumon Maui well. We need to replace one of the pumps. That's a capital expenditure, so we will be making that replacement with concurrence from DOD on the replacement. So we will be working on that in the coming months. On water distribution for February, our total pump station operability was at 91.2%, a slight decline. We have some issues in our southern pump stations where we've lost a couple VFDs, and our crews are working to make repairs so that we can get those back up and running, and then the percentage should come back up to where it was in the prior month. On the next page, you can see our water distribution getting back to some normalcy after a couple months of up and down, especially in our northern water levels. You can see for both levels, both north and south, we are at about 45% at the end of February, which is more where we need to be than we have been in prior months. So things are okay. We are still working hard, though, to maintain production capacity and face continued challenges with that moving forward. On the wastewater side, the next slide shows wastewater collection performance. Again, our pump station operability is not where we want it to be. It's a slight improvement at 80.6% from prior months. Towards the end of 2024, we were below 80. Now we're above 80%. We are still making efforts to try and get that up to higher numbers. Again, we face each station has redundant pumping capacity, so they're still operational, but those spare pumps that are not functional, we need to get them replaced and repair other issues within these pump stations.
I didn't understand.
Moving on to the next slide, you can see in the wastewater collection CCTV performance. For the month of February, we are just under our target for CCTV and cleaning and inspections. Again, this is critical partial consent decree work that also needs to be continued. Moving on to the next slide for wastewater treatment. For the month of February, we generated and disposed of 1.07 million pounds of sludge at a cost of $96.5 thousand. Very much in line with prior months, so things moving along normally. Wastewater treatment flows are normal for this time of year. You can see the decline for agate in terms of the total flows from the wet season. So we have decreased flows for this time of year, but we do still need to tighten up the wastewater collection system to eliminate those fluctuations and seasonal variances in flow rates, and that's also part of the consent decree work. Moving on to the asset management report, the preventive maintenance to corrective maintenance ratio is at 76 preventive to 24 corrective maintenance, and you can see those numbers on the second chart there, the completion rates for equipment preventive maintenance at 87% and corrective maintenance at 89%. For work order completion. In terms of corrective maintenance work related to leak repairs versus equipment repairs, it's an even split at 50-50, and the equipment corrective maintenance completion is at 89%, and the leak corrective maintenance completion is at 99% of total. Moving on to update on our One Guam, no movement on some of these licenses and lease and property transfer issues. On Route 15, there is an item there for pressure zone realignment request for an easement for one of our stations along Route 15. This request for an easement may be rolled into the planned work for the medical campus. And so that's kind of, it's still in process on the military side, but we've advised them that we may have a change to the requested easement and might be able to roll it into the same request if the sewer line easement is granted. So could be some additional developments there. There was an issue with Murray Road, the transfer of sewer and water line easements to GWA from the Navy for infrastructure that is outside and we are currently maintaining. So we're still looking at that. And then the only other item I would note here is for Camp Blaas and the Marbo area, Marbo South area. We have 3 wells, if you recall, Mr. Chairman, in that federal property. There has been, I guess, completion of some of the construction activity that was conducted in that area, and the access to the gates now has been changed, and so we had a little bit of a coordination issue with the crews.
GWA had that property?
Yes. So those 3 wells are still on federal property, and in order to get access, now our folks have to go through a different process, and that just came about in the last month. So we're working through that to make sure we have unfettered access for monitoring and maintenance of those well sites. On the utility agreements for water with the Navy, water and sewer with the Navy, we are still working through those negotiations and the terms of the contract. There are about 4 to 6 articles that we still need to provide feedback on. The rest of them, I think we've provided our feedback, and we're waiting. We've asked for some changes, and we're waiting for the Navy on those as well. So still a work in progress. And then lastly, there is still we're still using more Navy water than we would like because of a failed valve on the Route 1, Route 8 intersection in Agana. That's a major intersection, and the work that's required to replace that failed valve is pretty extensive, more than we can handle on our own. So we have picked up a contractor to assist us with that, and we're working through the permitting process right now with DPW. So as soon as that gets resolved, expect to see some night work in that area where we dig up the northbound, I think it's northbound lanes on Marine Drive, and replace that valve. No changes to the court order summary. We are still at 98% complete, pending the completion of the tanks. That work is proceeding well. If you've passed by Home Depot recently, you've seen the progress we've made with the Tamuning tank. The Menangan tank is following closely behind, and we're working through some foundation issues on the Ugam reservoir, and as soon as those are resolved, then we'll start to see some work on the actual construction of the walls at the Ugam site as well. We are also undertaking steel tank rehabilitations and replacements. So far that work is moving well, except for one tank in Malolo, which we are going to have to put out to rebid, and we're hoping the responses we get will allow us to maintain the current court order schedule. Not too much on land acquisition. There's no updates. This is just repeated information for outstanding items. And then for the last couple of pages here, the leak repairs through February 2025 are for the month of January, February. You can see we did exceed our target of keeping backlog under 20 work orders per day, but as of the end of February, we were down to under 15, so making progress on keeping those numbers low. And then the last slide is a new one that we're reporting now on road repairs. So you can see for the month of February, the number of road repair and the status of whether it's temporary or has been permanently repaired. Those figures are presented by village. And the most that we've had are in Muriso and Umatic, in those southern areas where we do have old ACP lines that continue to affect service, and those are the primary priority for our ACP water line replacement project that is currently in the design stages. Okay.
Thanks, Miguel. Regarding accounts receivable due greater than 60 days for our residential customers, for the third month in a row, we've been able to reduce the amount in that group. Last month, we reduced it by 115,000, and an additional 233 accounts came current. That our current AR number of 839,000 is the lowest since May of 2023. So we've been able to make some good progress over the last 3 months on the residential side. On the commercial side, similarly, we're at the lowest level since May of 2024. We've had 2 months of declining receivables past 60 for commercial accounts. At this time, we have 25 accounts total past 60 days with for a total of 65,000 due on the commercial side. On the customer service side, we've got average number of active pay plans for the month of February increased slightly over January. And the only other notable things are the call center had an uptick in calls in February, as well as the Facebook account. So I think we just had a lot more outages, a lot more activity with our court-ordered units. So people were checking in on what was happening with the system during those months.
Good morning, Commissioners. As you can tell from our key financial indicators, we have had a strong debt service coverage for this fiscal year, and that's due to increasing revenues, and we've been able to keep our O&M expenses below budget. So as we move towards the end of the fiscal year, we're going to be looking at perhaps moving some of that extra revenue into debt service, rate stabilization fund, as we indicated in the budget resolution. Our collection ratio is up. Generally, when it's up like that, we get a payment from the federal government, which pushes up our collection ratio. We also have a healthy cash on hand amount. We're up to 260 days. And if you take a look at our demand seems to be chugging along and not dropping too much. I think our wastewater flows have been pretty healthy because, as I said, because of the federal government. Moving on to the next slide, as I said, our revenues compared to our expenditures have been producing a pretty healthy operating income, which has impacted our debt service coverage. If we go to the next slide, this just is a pictorial view of our water demand and revenues by rate class. The FY 25 numbers are annualized. And on the next slide is our wastewater flows and revenues. Going to the next slide, this is just a picture of our water demand and wastewater flows, from COVID to date. And for the most part, we've recovered except for our hotel class. Going to the next slide. If you recall, the PC agreed to adopt our rate design, proposed rate design. So we'll be moving from a 2-tier in residential to 3-tier. And so we just wanted to start tracking that so you can kind of see for our residents the spread between the number of customers that use below 3 kgals versus 3 to 10 and then over 10. And so the top is the number of customers and the bottom is their demand. And if we go to the next slide, this is water and wastewater. The previous slide was just water. Okay, and this is a picture of where we're at with regard to expenses. Compared to last year, our salaries and wages are higher, and our power is about the same. So as I said, we've been able to keep our O&M expenses below budget for the last few months. Going to the next slide. This is a different picture from what Chris showed you about AR aging. The slide on the left includes our inactive accounts, and the slide on the right excludes them. And then on I think the last slide is just a picture of our debt service. And that's it for me.
Colleagues, I mentioned to Telling to please follow up with our GovCom accounts, specifically GWA, as they begin to face their own challenges of getting cash in hand. So give us an update on Tuesday, okay, where we're at with that, and just remind our friends there that, yeah, please stay current as much as possible. Yeah.
What about the GIA, the airport?
Any updates on our talks with our friends at G Airport? No?
So not in terms of any outstanding or disputed amounts.
Okay.
We have indicated to them in recent discussions regarding
Our agreement?
their water system and the PFAS
Yeah.
work that we're coordinating on, the fact that we need to sit down at the table to get to reworking the operating agreement. So they are aware that we want to sit down and resolve that issue. They agreed that they want to resolve that issue, and that it's been languishing and it needs to be addressed. And we have reached out to their legal counsel just to give them a heads up that this is something that we need to do.
Okay. Okay. So I will contact the other board chair and just say, either we get this resolved or we will give you a nice timely notice to.
Understood.
Yeah, okay?
Okay.
I'll do my own on my side and just remind them that we need to move forward.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So, but is it at that level yet? I mean, that we have to go to the chair? I mean, what is the?
Yeah, what is-
Why
seems to
is it?
be- yeah,
Why is
go
it
ahead.
that they just kind of keep blowing us off?
Well, I think that it's been a combination of things. To be fair, Teresa hasn't gotten into the details of the operating agreement. So I did not want to engage until she was ready to engage. And we're at the point now that we do. Now, the closest we've ever gotten to resolving it was when Tom Atta was
The GM.
Was the GM.
It's 5 years ago.
Yeah, and he had worked really hard to get us over the hump on what remaining issues there were that need to be resolved. And at that time, there still was a kind of disagreement on the amount of, or the disputed amounts that they were claiming. And since that time, no one's wanted to pick up the ball on their end, and we, for the purposes of making sure that we could move forward with our CIP projects that are on airport property, tried to walk a fine line of pushing to get the operating agreement done, but also getting FAA approval so that we can move forward with the tank project. So now that we've got the tank project rolling and those distractions have kind of gone away, we're ready to get back to the table. So I think there's been a little bit of delay on both sides for various reasons.
Okay. Well, can we just get it resolved? Like, what should we put a timeline on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Next 30 days.
Okay.
From
no,
5
like I
years to
said,
30 days.
I'll make the one call that I need to do and just remind the chairman that don't have enough money to do PFAS, so you better sit down with us and, you know, I mean, if they wanna be a PFAS operator, I will gladly say good luck and, help us. I'm sure your friends at FAA will not allow you guys to do that. Anyways, all right, yeah,
Okay, and if there are any other issues that present themselves over the course of us trying to work this out,
just let us know.
let you know.
Is, Teresa, can you share with us what part of the operating agreement? I mean, we've basically been kicking this, anyways, never mind. I'll make the phone call and just say, we've given you 30 days and we need to get this resolved by, in all fairness, the end of April?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
that's fair.
that's good, all right.
What about the water tank? Is it almost finished?
Oh, it's beautiful, yep.
It is, there still needs to be some work, but it's moving along fairly quickly. It will
It's
be
topped
done.
off, right?
We did half of the roof for
Okay, nice.
Saturday.
Yeah.
The contractor's trying to get the second floor scheduled this week. There
Okay.
were some issues with some of the electrical grounding and conduits we're trying to work through, so maybe the floor will happen this week, maybe it'll get pushed next week to finish the roof.
So we're done with that and then you take down the metal one?
No, we,
We still have some piping work to do on the site, and
Ah.
we're gonna have to go into Route 10 to do some piping work to make the connections.
10A.
But when we get done with getting the concrete tank online, yes, then we'll take the steel tank offline and inspect it.
It's not gonna be demolished. We're gonna